Thomas Jefferson, I believe it was 1821, he said that the Tennessee Constitution is the least imperfect and the most Republican. And he is, or he was right, I agree. I've read many state constitutions, and Tennessee by the far is the best. It is our shield and our armor, and the Declaration of Rights is our sword. I tend to disagree with Sheriff Brown saying that we have some good people in our General Assemblies. We do not. We have none. None that I know of. I went to the Tennessee General Assembly, 132 senators and representatives, and I said, I'm asserting my right to reform the government and to petition by address and remonstrance. And out of 132, I found one, the Honorable Bud Halsey out of District 2. He was the only member of the entire General Assembly who would file my remonstrance with the clerk. When we talk about how are we going to fix this nation and begin to heal our republic and restore the intent of the founders, it is through our right to petition the government. Dr. Dan, and I agree with a lot of the tools that we used with social media. I am prolific on social media, and I'm reaching about 150 Tennesseans right now, as well as other nations, Great Britain, Australia, Canada. A lot of people are following the work that I'm doing because a lot of people recognize this is how we're going to get it done. This is how we're going to take back our government. It's in Tennessee Constitution, Article 1, Section 23. Citizens have a right to peaceably assemble and instruct our representatives and to petition for redress of grievances or other proper purpose by address or remonstrance. And we'll talk about that last phrase in a minute here, by address or remonstrance. But here's why Tennessee's Constitution is the best. And in many ways, the Tennessee Constitution is superior to our federal Constitution, particularly with our Declaration of Rights. And when Thomas Jefferson said it's the least imperfect and the most Republican, I believe that he was talking about our federal Constitution as well. My sixth great-grandfather was a Tennessee pioneer. A lot of the Tennessee pioneers came out of Virginia. And so they were fresh dealing with the tyranny of the British Crown. And so when they wrote the original I went back a little bit earlier, and then there was a second one, the 1836. And then after the Reconstruction period, after the Civil War, we had to rewrite to take out slavery. And so we had the 1870 Constitution. But the 1870 Constitution preserved the Declaration of Rights that was stated in the original 1834 Constitution. That's right. So these were guys that knew how to shield the people with the Constitution. And they knew how to give us a sword in our Declaration of Rights. You know, we talk about the right to bear arms. The right to bear arms has done nothing to preserve our republic, nor will it. This is our most important right. If any person out there were to start to organize people to take up arms against the government, the FBI has keywords. They would catch it either through the cell phones and monitoring the way that people know now, or they would catch it through email or text exchange. Even if you encrypt it, they'll get it, and you'll be arrested for inciting violence, and you'll go to jail for a very long time. Now, we are going to heal this nation with love of our fellow man, love of our republic. We're going to do it with a calm demeanor and a rational argument. We are going to come together as a people and demand reform of our government. It is as simple as that. Article 1, Section 1 of the Tennessee Constitution. Power is inherent in the people. And to that end, the people have an unalienable, indefeasible right to reform, alter, or abolish the government in such manner as we may think proper. So unalienable, that right to reform, alter, or abolish, it can't be sold and it can't be transferred. That's what unalienable means. Indefeasible, it cannot be violated under any pretense, whatever. We just need to assert our rights as a people, and we bring people together through social media, by talking to our neighbors, talking to the clerks at the store. We are all fed up with a corrupt government. I'm going to give you guys some examples of the corruption that's here in Tennessee. Tennessee Code annotated 2920-102 or 202. Governmental entities cannot be sued for libel, slander, deceit, malicious prosecution, invasion of privacy, and civil rights violations. Governmental entities do not do those things. Those are bad actor state officials, primarily judges, that do that. And when you try to sue a judge, then they say, oh, well, 11th Amendment, sovereign immunity extends to that judge, and you can't sue him for that either. And so these guys are literally above the law. And this is the fundamental breakdown of how we got to this mess that we're in right now, is that there is no oversight of the judiciary. Our government was founded on checks and balances and separation of powers. And there is no check of the judiciary, none whatsoever.
Absolutely.
What is a judge? A judge is an attorney in a black robe. And attorneys are one of the least trusted professions in this nation, just above car salesmen and members of General Assembly and members of the Congress. So we're going to slap a black robe on them and call them Your Honor, and we're going to trust these guys, right? How stupid are we? I mean, Hamilton in Federalist 83, magistrates are easily corrupted. Why do you think they put that we have a right of due process and that we have a right to a trial by jury? We put a jury in there to decide because we don't trust the judge, because magistrates are easily corrupted. But people are deprived of the right to a trial by jury. We don't even know what our rights are anymore. We think we do. We think First Amendment is about free speech. It's not. The most powerful right of the people is the right to petition the government. And this goes back to the 12th century Magna Carta, that people have a right to petition the government. And in 1640, in the House of Commons in England, they said commoners, down to the ground, commoners have a right to prepare and present petitions. And so in the Tennessee Constitution, it says that we have the right to petition by address or remonstrance. I printed off a few copies. If you guys want to come up here and grab these. This is the first petition filed since the year 1850 in Tennessee. There used to be hundreds of petitions filed with the General Assembly, and they stopped in 1850, and I don't know why they stopped. I've done a lot of research on it. I've actually gone down and looked at the microfiche and looked at the petitions that were filed. Just to give you an example of some of them, a lot of them back in the early 1800s were about we want a road, from Dayton over to the next town, or we want a bridge across the river. That was very common in the 1800s. But they had one was a person transported a prisoner, and he wanted the state to pay him for his time in transporting that prisoner. One was a school teacher who had school funds stolen out of his home, and he wanted the General Assembly to forgive him of that money. But there's lots of reasons that they went. Divorces used to be done by petition. Divorces used to occur not in our courts, in our legislature. There are hundreds and hundreds of divorce petitions that are sitting in a drawer in the Tennessee archives, all cataloged in alphabetical order by name. So I filed this petition of remonstrance. It's the first petition since the year 1850. I believe in the history of this nation, it is the first petition of remonstrance asserting an unalienable, indefeasible right to reform the government. I do not think this has been done in the history of this nation. And so in this remonstrance, I demanded oral argument. And here's why. Because the Tennessee General Assembly and Secretary of State have on their website a PDF typewritten version of the Tennessee Constitution. And that's what I relied on. I figured I could trust my government that the Tennessee Constitution that they present to me on their website is the actual Tennessee Constitution. It's not. In the last phrase of Article 1, Section 23, in the typewritten version, it says, by address of remonstrance. And so they stripped us of our right to address them. It is a usurpation of a constitutionally protected right, no different than saying you don't have a right of free speech anymore, or you don't have a right to bear arms. It is a usurpation of, I believe, our most powerful right of how we restore a proper form of government.
Exactly.
So I was arguing. These guys. I filed this the first day of the 2019 session. I went into the clerk's office and I filed this with the Senate clerk. I had been emailing them about a month and a half ahead of time. I started in I think around December 8th. I emailed the entire General Assembly, all 132 of them. I got all their emails off the website and I emailed them and I said,
What a work.
I'm going to present you with an opportunity to begin a great healing of our nation in filing a petition of remonstrance. No legislative body in the history of this nation has been presented with an opportunity like this. And I implore you to embrace this opportunity. So when I went to the General Assembly, they all expected me. You know, I walked in there. I told them I was going in on the first day. And so I just saw some guy walking down the hallway, and I said, I see the House clerk is not in. Where's the Senate clerk? His door is shut. And he said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, I want to file a petition of remonstrance. And he's like, oh, excuse me. He goes around the corner and then comes back, and he said, the chief clerk is waiting for you in the Senate chambers. So I went over and he accepted it, and this is the file stamped copy. I waited around for a couple hours, and I went into the House clerk, and the House clerk had previously told me that I could not file a petition. It's Chief Clerk of the House, Tammy Letzler, which is a federal crime that she committed, in my strong opinion. And I've told her that. So when I went in there, she was avoiding me and wouldn't come to the office. I'm tenacious. I waited around all day long, and I went in there, and I said, will you file? This, by the way, it has 700 pages of appendix that go along with this, which is all the proof, right? I mean, it's a stack of papers. So I went up to Miss Letzler, and I said, I'd like to file my petition of remonstrance. She says, you can't. You have to get a member of the House to file it on your behalf. And I was like, well, where does it say that? And she's like, well, that's our policy. And I was like, well, where's the policy? And she's like, well, that's just the way it is. And I was like, this hasn't been done since 1850. I was like, where's your policy? So I said, well, here, let me take out my phone, and I would like you to say on camera that you are refusing to accept my petition of remonstrance. She literally ran in her office and slammed the door. Literally.
That's when you know you're doing it right, when they run.
She ran in her office and closed the door.
Oh, John.
I'm not done, so I reached out to all of the General Assembly, and I found Representative Halsey. And he said, I actually went to his office, and I said, Representative Halsey, I've been talking to him a couple times on the phone about this. When he's one of the few that's actually read it, and he's like, man, that's some heavy reading there. And so I went into his office, and I said, Representative Halsey, will you please file this? And he said, well, I'm going to go across the hall and talk to a couple other members and see if I'm not going to get my head chopped off for this. And so he called me up, and right before they went into the House chamber, he said, well, I don't know what's going to happen now, but I filed it for you, Mr. Gentry. And so I went in, and you can watch live stream legislative proceedings. And so I started watching it live stream. And now, there's rules for all of this. In the House Rules of Order, it's Rule 15 in the House, and it's Rule 22 in the Senate. These are their rules that they follow, just like courts have state rules of civil procedure. rules of evidence. The legislative bodies have rules of order. And so House Rule 15 and Senate Rule 22 say a brief statement shall be filed with the clerk before a petition shall be received and read at the table. So their rule says that petitions are to be read, they shall be received and read at the table. Well, instead, what they did is they read the brief statement that Representative Halsey filed with the clerk. And that brief statement, and he just said, I'm presenting this petition of remonstrance on behalf of Mr. Gentry. And then he just cited the cover page here. He said, on petition of grievances of the people of Tennessee, 1, unconstitutional and void statutes. 2, failure to address grievances. 3, judicial reform. 4, reinstitution of constitutionally guaranteed rights. Signed, Bud Halsey. So that's what they did in front of the entire Tennessee House of Representatives. You could hear a pin drop in that room for 10 seconds. The entire, 98, 80, I think 80-something members, 98 members in the House were silent for 10 seconds. And they're like, what the heck just happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. The power of the people just woke up.
Exactly.
That's what happened.
That's right.
So what happened with this is the Tennessee General Assembly ignored it. The clerks did not distribute the petition to the members, and they violated their rules of order to read the petition at the table. Now that rule I'm also challenging is unconstitutional, because I know in Tennessee that we have a right to petition by address or remonstrance. And I have 2 pages in this thing about oral argument and my right to oral argument. So the House and the Senate, they have rules of order. And I think it's 72 in the House, Rule 72, and 77 in the Senate. They say anything that's not covered in our rules of order, we're going to rely on Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure. And Section 148 of Mason's Manual says petitioners present their petitions. This is a right that we have forgotten, and it is our most powerful right. So we see what happens when we file a remonstrance, is they ignore it.
That's right.
That's why our founders put in there by address, because you cannot ignore somebody talking to you. I want 132 members of the Tennessee General Assembly to sit down for an hour and listen to me demand reform of the government and present my arguments. And I have a constitutional right to do that, and I'm asserting that right. So they refused. They will not read it at the table, and they will not uphold my right. They are in treason to the Constitution. And so I'm taking them to court. So I took them to Davidson County Chancery Court. I filed a petition for a writ of mandamus against the speakers and the clerks of both houses. A mandamus is a mandate. Order them to perform their duty. Well, this is stupid, because I want to reform the judiciary. This is my biggest gripe, is we have a judiciary that is in violation of the Constitution, violation of the separation of powers, and I'll if I'm not going too long, they're also holding prohibited offices that they're not supposed to have, and I'll explain that. I'll explain that to you in a minute. So I was in court arguing based on the false Constitution by address of remonstrance, and I was making argument that by address of remonstrance is a prepositional phrase. Now, if you can say librarians are fond of books is a prepositional phrase. And it's complementary, and because it's a complementary prepositional phrase, it's required. So you can say librarians are fond of books, but you can't say librarians are fond. It doesn't make sense to say librarians are fond of what? So I was arguing in court that because it says by address of remonstrance, they have to address it. They can't ignore it. They at least got to tell me no. So they've got the Deputy Attorney General. It's one step below the Attorney General who's fighting me on this case. She's corrupt too. I call her out. She has made false statements to the court. She took my 72-page remonstrance, cut it down to 13 pages. She altered the language deleted words and phrases, inserted her own words and phrases into it, and submitted that into court and said, attached is a full copy of Mr. Gentry's petition of remonstrance. That was falsified evidence, and it was fraud upon the court, and it's a federal crime. And she got up and said, well, it wasn't me, the respondents, who were the clerks and speakers of both houses, gave it to her. I'm like, well, somebody committed a crime here. So as a result of that hearing, the Deputy Attorney General got up and she said, well, the Constitution actually says by address or remonstrance. I'm like, well, thank you. Now I know that through constructive fraud, I have been deceived to not know that I have a right to address the powers of the government. And so I said, I want to see the original 1834 and the 1870 constitutions. I want to see it with my own eyes. I want to read word for word what the actual Constitution says. So I went to the Tennessee archives and I said, look, I'm in a court proceeding right now against the General Assembly, and I want to see the original 1834 and 1870 constitutions. And I'm very good friends with the chief legislative librarian down there. His name's Vince McGrath. I've had a lot of conversations. Lovely guy. That is a wealth of knowledge. And this is how, we don't need to look forward about how to reform the government. We need to look backward. Our founders left an instruction booklet for us.
Yeah, that's right.
And we read their debates and what they talked about, and then we'll begin to understand why they wrote what they wrote in the Constitution, is by understanding their debates about it and going back. So the Tennessee Archives, I love that place. It is a tremendous resource in there. So he said, you can look online. There's a digitized image of it on the Secretary of State website. And I said, no, I want to see the original. And so they took it up. They went all the way up to the Secretary of State. And he came back and said, let Mr. Gentry see it. So they took it out of in cold off storage. They raised the temperature slowly over about a week and brought it up to room temperature. And then I had a private viewing. And it was the most honorable experience of my life.
Yes, it was.
To sit there and read the words of our founders.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
It was an incredibly moving experience for me.
Yes, it was.
Did you take a picture of it?
No, they had a lot of rules. Dr. Cannon is he's the chief archivist down there. And he sent me an email and he said, I understand that you've been granted the extremely rare privilege of viewing the Tennessee Constitution. He said, well, we have some rules. No pictures, no pens, no sharp objects. You can't touch. It was like a laundry list that he gave me of rules. And he said, if you agree to these rules, then we'll see on Tuesday, whatever the date was. I think it was in last July or something like that. But it was surreal. It's a beautiful document. It's about this tall and about this wide, the 1870 Constitution. The 1834 is on parchment, and it's about this big. Wow. And the script, it's art. I mean, the whole thing is the language of it is art, but the beauty. I mean, the hand script. It's a beautiful document. Yeah. So I went back into court the next hearing, and if something's not on the docket, these corrupt attorneys in black robes pretending to be judges, they'll say, well, it's not on the docket, I'm not going to hear it today. Well, I'm not about that garbage coming out of their mouths. So I went in and I said, before I started, I said, I hereby assert my right under Article 1, Section 23, to address the powers of the government for proper purpose. And I said the Tennessee General Assembly and Secretary of State are holding out a materially altered false version of the Tennessee Constitution. I move this court to issue order upon them to correct the Tennessee Constitution. And she was silent. She didn't shut me up. Did not respond at all. And she said, okay, I'll hear your motion now, Mr. Gentry. And so then I went in whatever motion I had that day. She issued an order, and she said, the Tennessee General Assembly does not have a duty to present the Constitution to the people. They don't have to put the Constitution on their website.
Wow.
So she said they don't have a duty to present a correct version of the Tennessee Constitution.
Wow.
This is Judge Moskal, or Chancellor Moskal in Davidson County Chancery Court. That was a ruling
Wow.
that they don't have a duty to present a correct version of the Tennessee
How
Constitution.
How awful.
So I've been raising stink about this like you would not believe, because if they can take one right,
Yeah.
you know,
That's right.
and if they can even deny me through the judiciary to correct it, they can do anything they want.
That's exactly right.
This is profoundly disturbing,
Yes,
and a
it
problem
is.
that must be addressed. So I met with Representative Rose, United States Congress. I went to a Sumner County Republican Party meeting, and I went there specifically because I knew Representative Rose was going to be there. And so he did a little Q&A afterwards, and I printed off a life-size version of the actual 1870 Constitution.
Wow.
And I took it to Representative Rose, and I said, can you help me with the Tennessee General Assembly to correct the Constitution? And you know, Rose, he's an attorney. They do not have the interest of the people in mind.
No, hardly.
They do not.
No.
And so Rose said, well, that's an issue for the state. And I said, well, I beg to differ. I said, the United States Constitution, Article 4, Section 4 says that the United States shall guarantee every state a Republican form of government.
Yeah.
And I said, so when you alter your Constitution, you're no longer Republican in character or form, when you usurp a right. And so will you help me? And then I got shut up by the moderator, and they wouldn't let me talk anymore. And so they just shut me down with that. So I'm still pushing this in court. But this is a couple of things for you gentlemen here about Article 4, Section 4. So the original language, the final language is the United States shall guarantee every state a Republican form of government. And this gets back to how do we solve this problem? How do we get this done? How do we reform our government? It's under Article 4, Section 4. Because the United States made a guarantee to us. When they created the federal government, they made that guarantee to us in the Constitution. Well, they made that provision for themselves that the United States would guarantee a Republican form of government. That language was proposed by James Madison. And he said the United States ought to guarantee a Republican form of government.
Yeah.
And the governor of Virginia at the time, and remember the Virginians were dealing with some of the worst tyranny. You know, Virginia and North Carolina were dealing with some of the worst tyranny out of the crown, in my opinion. But the governor of Virginia objected to it, and then they came up with that final language. And here's the part that's really important, is Edmund Randolph was a lawyer from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And you'll notice a difference, just as an aside for you guys. When I say attorney, that means I don't have any respect for them. A lawyer is knowledgeable in the law, and the law is the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. Attorneys know statutory crap that they create in our legislative houses. They don't know the law. They do not teach the Tennessee Constitution in law school. I've looked at the law school curriculums. They don't teach it. Anyway, so Edmund Randolph was a lawyer. I have respect for him because he argued in support of the final language. He said no state ought to be able to transform itself into a monarchy. And this is what I talk about, going back to the founders and the debates and what they talk about. It's important for us to understand why. So now we know that a Republican form of government is not a monarchy. So we also know it's not a democracy.
Yeah.
And we also know that it's not an oligarchy.
That's right.
But an oligarchy is what we have in fact.
Yes, it is.
We are ruled basically by the bar, and the judiciary is controlled by the bar,
right.
And it's the attorneys that are running the show right now.
Yeah.
But it is a house of cards. I guarantee you, these guys are scared to death of me. I call them out every day on social media. I encourage you guys to find my page. It's at Gentry number 4 the people, at Gentry for the people. I encourage you to look it up because I post about all the corruption, and they can't do anything against me. They can't hold me in contempt of Congress. It's one of the reasons I'm running for state senate, is because I have protection under federal election laws. When I call out corruption, they can't hold me in contempt. And also because I'm running for state senate, I can advertise and push my posts about corruption and raise awareness in Tennessee. So these guys can't do anything. And I've done posts on there. Tennessee Court of Appeals, aids and abets rights violations. I've demanded impeachment of all of them. And this gets down, okay on time, a couple more minutes? Okay. So this is the heart of the problem, in my opinion, is that there's no check of the judiciary.
Yep.
And so when you and the judiciary and the bar have clearly taken control of the legislative houses, and this is the fundamental breakdown that's caused all of this tyranny and everything that these guys have been talking about. Is because the bar and the judiciary are in control of two branches of government, and our founders defined that as the very definition of tyranny. Is when all the powers of the government are within one branch of government. That is the very definition of tyranny.
That's exactly.
Because there's no check or balance. So what happened, we had incredible problems with corruption back in the 1970s. And as a result, the United States Congress tried to pacify the people, and they enacted 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, that any person that violates your rights under color of law is subject to a civil suit. Well, they tricked us because you go to court for a civil suit, and they never enforce 42 U.S.C. So it was just a pacification of the people at the time to enact 42 U.S.C. 1983.
Yep.
But at the same time, they're like, oh, well, here at the state level, we're going to help fix this problem too. And so they created judicial oversight agencies across the country. In Tennessee, it's called the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct.
Yep.
I'm a certified public accountant. I'm a very good auditor. That's where I started out, was auditing with Ernst & Young at the time, EY now. And I did an auditor's compilation report. I downloaded the annual reports for 18 states' judicial oversight agencies, like California Judicial Qualifications Commission, Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct. I did 18 states.
Wow.
They dismissed 100% of complaints against judges. 100%.
Wow.
And in Tennessee, the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct has not once since its inception in 1971 recommended removal or impeachment of a single judge. These guys are above the law.
They are.
And now here's the real problem with the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct. And our founders knew how to protect this, but we the people have forgotten how to hold government accountable. And what I'm trying to do tonight, and for the people out on social media that are watching this, is we have to restore the right of petition and the voice and the power of the people.
Exactly.
That is the only way we can elect one corrupt member of the legislature after another, and we've seen that it has only gotten worse. So, that's where I disagree with Sheriff Brown about, we need to elect good people. No, we need to restore the voice of the people and the power, our most powerful right of petition. And so we can get together and start finding like-minded people. So you don't like term limits. Well, let's get 10% of the United States population, because I guarantee probably about 50% of the United States population is for term limits.
Amen.
But no matter who we elect, they never enact term limits. It doesn't matter who you elect. But if we had, say, 10% of the population, 30 million people, and I bet we could probably get 150 million people to sign an affidavit and say, I want term limits. And then we file that in with the clerk of the House in the United States Congress, just like I did here in Tennessee. And we assert the will and the power of the people. This is how we control our government, lawfully and peacefully, and with calm demeanor and rational argument, with the law on our side. Now remember, I said at the beginning, the Constitution is our shield and our armor, and the Declaration of Rights is our sword. And I plan on sticking that sword right in their kidney and shoving it all the way through. And I'm talking about the right of petition when I say that, not literally. because these guys would love to get me inciting violence, which I will never do.
Fiddlesticks.
Uh,
Not here.
All right, so thank you all. Thank you for your time. But, parting word. He said, get off the couch. I'm going to go a step further. Stop whining and get up and do something.
Amen.
That's my message.
And get off the couch. Talk to your neighbors. If you use social media, learn how to use social media. Anything we can do to raise awareness with our fellow citizens, we will correct this problem.